Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Planet Tyro. You're here with your host Donald Wonder, and we're here to talk about books. Let's get our read on. It's been a while. Well, I don't think it's been that long since I spoke about a book series, but I came across this book series that was getting a lot of praise. A lot of people asked me to check this one out, and it's a series called Ex-Heroes. Now, this is a series that does deal with the zombie apocalypse genre, and even though I've read really good stories, I've spoken about The Walking Dead, I've spoken about We're Alive, I've spoken about a few zombie things that, even that UK show Dead Set, I have to admit, when you're dealing with dramatization, the zombie apocalypse genre is a good setting for a lot of good dramatization. But with this book series, I'm going to say it's a little bit more fun, it's a little bit more entertaining, and a little bit more accessible for the general audience. So there's 5 books of this so far. I'm going to actually talk about how I felt about each book. And I think the book series started in 2013, and the most recent book was released earlier this year. And the first book has the simple name, just Ex-Heroes. And it's, well, I don't want to get into spoilers, as I usually don't, because I don't want to spoil things for you. But the main story focuses in America. It focuses on a zombie outbreak. But unlike other stories, not only is there a zombie outbreak going on, but this is set in a world where people have found superpowers, or people have gained superpowers through various means. So this author, Peter Clines, is combining 2 different story elements together, and it comes in a very unique way. But my worry with this book series, when I heard it was like The Walking Dead meets The Avengers, it sounded very silly, very popcorny, and I was weary of the stance or the tone that the author was going to take. Actually, this book series starts off very serious and very military. I will tell you that. There's a very military-esque vibe to this whole series, and that's mostly because, just like in most zombie apocalypse series, the majority of the population has been decimated, has been destroyed, they're dead, they're zombies, and the heroes that live in this world have taken charge and they're looking after people. And the first book, which is called Ex-Heroes, kind of threw me. I'm not going to lie, because I found the first half of this book very dull. And that's because the first half of this book feels like a military procedure. You see these heroes taking over, looking after people, and they have a very strict regimen of how they do things. They go on runs, and they use military code, and it feels like it's very organized. And I do appreciate that. And as a reader, I like the serious tone they're taking with it, the serious avenue they want to pursue with the story. But I really think the author took the wrong tact with the introduction, because honestly, maybe not the first half of it, the first 35% of the book is really, you're already in the middle. The apocalypse has already happened, and they're running through a lot of the procedures. They're going on a run that goes wrong, and I understand why the author did this. He wanted to get you in the thick of it, and then there's a lot of flashbacks explaining who the main character is, who his powers are. I would say there's like 4 or 5 characters you follow, and they're all superheroes. There are normal human characters as well. And like I said, I was so bored with the first quarter of it, but I was so interested to see what the author would do with it. And I will say, by the time I got halfway through the book and I understood the past, and there's a lot of fun elements here, that it took a while for me to get to it. And I do want to say, the other books don't make this mistake. I just understand why the author decided to do it this way. A lot of authors decide to throw you in the story first and bring you back, but it was a bit too military for me. And I will say this, because I'm criticizing the first book mostly. I read the first book a second time after I finished the series. I went back because I wanted to fill in some holes, and again, I still think that the tact he took with the first book, with taking them on the little run and showing the military procedure of how these heroes are looking after the people, was probably the wrong tact to take. And the reason why I'm going into this is because I want to warn people that give the whole book a chance, because I think honestly the first 35% of the first book is kind of dull, and I probably should have taken a different tact. But by the end of it, I liked all the characters. I got into it, had a really good battle, and then we get the superhero, but the tension element with the zombie apocalypse, and there's also super villains-ish. So I'm just speaking about the first book, because the second book, well, the first book was called Ex-Heroes. It's an okay book. I'm not going to rate them individually. It's okay. It's an interesting introduction. But by the end of it, you'll definitely want to read the second book. And the second book was called Ex-Patriots. Now, the second book, I really like this book. This book, they introduced another element, like another army faction, and the heroes go to meet somewhere else, and there's super tension. There's a big super villain that makes an appearance as well. And honestly, the second book was one of my favorites. Very tight, again, very procedural, but not as boring as the first book. The first book probably got the training wheels out of the way. This book had a good story, interesting point, added more characters, more superheroes, a super villain element. Actually, 2 super villain elements was excellent. And yeah, second book, highly recommend it. Ex-Patriots, that was. The third book, Excommunication, I have to say, man, to me, this was the apex of the series. Excommunication, I actually thought they set up so much in the second book. I already thought I knew where the third book was going to go. They could have just continued where the second book picked up off. But nope, the author decides to bring in magic into the series. And I have to say, man, it's kind of a risky tact because the superheroes in the book aren't crazy powerful. They're very powerful, but they seem, even though it's a superhero genre, it seems kind of grounded, a lot of their superheroes, their superhero powers. But once you introduce magic, I wasn't sure I would like the tone, but they introduce it gradually. And honestly, this is the best book in the series to me. But you do have to read the first 2 to really enjoy it. You can't just dive in. Introduces magic, introduces another villain as well. And it's not even a good versus bad, the heroes versus villains book. Most of honestly, it's pretty mature. It's pretty military and procedural, and it's, you know, you like the characters. I know I haven't spoken about the characters individually. I'll leave that to the end. But honestly, this third book really drew my attention. This felt like a tight trilogy, and honestly, in some ways, I would recommend just reading these first 3 books, because the next 2 books, not such a big fan of. So the next book I want to talk about, which is called Ex-Purgatory. This one, it was a bit of a shock for me, because I can't get into spoilers to why it's a shock, but basically the main character is in a completely different situation. You know, it just feels like when you know something's going on, because nothing makes sense. The character it feels like the previous books don't matter anymore. And basically what the author did is he just took a sci-fi concept, something you see in the Twilight Zone, and made a book out of it, which is interesting. But ultimately, there isn't a lot of character. There's not a lot of character development because of it. Because it's one of those. I don't want to call it a what if story, but it kind of is a what if. I'm trying to be vague about it. I think the character Stealth, you learn more about her background, which I'll talk about the character at the end again. But Stealth is probably the most thing I got from this. It's a fun aside, but honestly, you're either going to take it or leave it. And by the end of it, the thing that irritated me the most about the book is that the villain that's kind of behind the curtain on this whole thing is a hybrid of another villain. And even the way that the author tried to make it a hybrid doesn't make much sense to me. It's like, you didn't want to use the villain, but you did, but you use him in a way where it's not him. So again, being vague, not trying to confuse you. Bottom line is, the 4th book, I was let down by it, but it's one of those concept stories you're either gonna like it or you're not. So, and then we're gonna get to the most recent book, which is called Exile, and this is easily the book I really dislike the most. And man, I don't know where to start with this book. This is a book that suffers from characters making ridiculous decisions, absolutely ridiculous decisions that just made me want to pull my hair out. It's so irritating. I mean, I'm going to give a little bit of a light spoiler. You meet like a superhero whose power, it's not even the power, is basically they're a zombie, but they're not a zombie. And the main character is going to meet a whole new group of people that are isolated. And you bring this person who's a zombie to this new group who's scared of zombies. It makes no fucking sense. And then you put yourself, and the main character puts himself in so much danger just to appease newcomers. I really understand that this is meant to be a very optimistic character and trying to be the hero we should all strive to be, but his optimism got into so much unnecessary trouble. And honestly, as a writer, I just felt like the author made a lot of super contrived situations just for the sake of the plot. and the author's done better than this. But that's only half of the story. The other half of the story has got to do with the people having to farm for food in this new area. That story is lackluster as well. But overall, honestly, this book was very disappointing. It actually felt like the author was kind of struggle to find something to write about, because it's very lackluster filler, not that much character development except for the naivety of the main character, George, Saint George or whatever. It's enjoyable, but it's enjoyable on a very basic level, but all the reviews I read on Goodreads said it's the most disappointing book. So on a whole, I will say the series is enjoyable. The first 3 books are really good. I never spoke about the characters. Now, the characters have got a lot of personality. Stealth is probably one of the most awesome female characters I've read in, well, she's the most awesome, maybe a bit of a stretch. She's an awesome character, let's put it that way. She's super cool, super intelligent. The main character, George, as I said before, is a bit of an optimist. We got Zap, who reminds me of Cinder from Killer Instinct, but very fun, super pop culture nerds guy. Then we've got Cerberus with the armor. I like the characters. It's a nice cast of characters. That you can tell the ethnicities, black, white, Asian, and all that. The bad guys. I think this has a really nice cast of characters as well. It's not too serious, the book on a whole, and it's an enjoyable book series. But I really feel like it has a strong 3 books, and in the last 2, the author's kind of losing his way and being a little bit, I wouldn't even call it experimental, but it feels like he's losing his edge a little bit, and it's sad because I think we got 2 more strong books out of the franchise, but who knows? This is a book series I'll come back to and enjoy. As a rating, I think it's a low solid B series. It's enjoyable, and I did listen to the audiobook series. I think Audible did an in-house audiobook cast, so it's a cast of like 4 or 5 different narrators. They did a really good job. It's an easy listen. It's a fun book series, but the first 3 are strong. The last 2 are kind of weak to me. And that's it, guys. So if you've read Ex-Heroes, even if you've read the book or not the audiobook, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you think I'm being too critical, you don't agree with me, you love the whole series, and none of the books were bad, then let me know. If you agree with me that some of the books are lackluster and some of them are good, like the first 3, then, let me know in the comments down below. But let me leave it at that. This was a longer review because I got to do 5 books at once. But guys, if you like the content, why don't you become a subscriber and hit that subscribe button? You can also see the other content we've got on the right there, all the annotations, books, movies, TV shows, the podcast. Thanks for watching. I'll leave you guys until the next one. But as always, take care. Peace out.